All right, today we're pulling back the curtain on something we all rely on every single day, but probably don't think about too much. Transportation. I mean, it's literally the circulatory system of our global economy. It's that unseen engine that brings you everything from your morning coffee to that new phone in your pocket. So let's dive right in.
Seriously, have you ever stopped to think about it? How does that package get from a factory maybe halfway across the world and land on your doorstep in just a couple of days? It's kind of a modern miracle, right? It's this incredibly complex dance of ships and planes, trains, and trucks. And today, we're going to unpack exactly how all that magic really works.
So here's the game plan for today. First, we'll look at the 5 basic ways to move stuff around. Then, we'll get into how companies actually make the call on which one to use. After that, we'll talk about the real game changer, combining them. We'll also tackle that big do it yourself or hire someone question, and wrap it all up with the never-ending search for making things faster and cheaper. Okay, let's start with the basics. No matter how complicated a supply chain gets, it all boils down to just 5 fundamental ways of moving goods. Think of them like the primary colors of logistics. Everything else is just a mix of these 5. And here are our 5 players. First up, you've got road transport. We call it the flexible sprinter because, well, it can go pretty much anywhere, door to door. Then there's rail, the heavy lifter, perfect for hauling massive amounts of stuff over land. Water is our marathon runner, slow and steady, but it handles something like 90% of all global trade. You've got air, the pricey VIP, for when things absolutely have to get there fast. And last but not least, the pipeline, the silent mover, just constantly flowing with liquids and gases, often right beneath our feet.
Now, here's something that's really key. Think about it. A product might cross an entire ocean on a giant ship, then travel across a continent on a train. But how does it start its journey, and how does it end it? Almost always, it's on a truck. Road transport is that universal piece of the puzzle. It's the only one that really does true door-to-door, which makes it absolutely essential for that first and last mile of pretty much every single delivery.
So, if you've got these 5 different ways to move things, how on earth do companies choose the right one? Let me tell you, it's not as easy as just looking for the cheapest price tag. It's actually a super interesting balancing act, a real puzzle with a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, the person in charge of this, a logistician, has to juggle all of these things at once. I mean, what's the budget? How fast does this actually need to arrive? Is reliability the most important thing? What are we even shipping? Is it a box of feathers or a pallet of lead bricks? How far does it have to go? Every single answer to those questions points you in a totally different direction.
And this really boils down to the oldest trade-off in the book for logistics. Do you want it fast or do you want it cheap? You can't usually have both. For example, if you've got a factory that's about to shut down because you need a tiny critical part from halfway across the world, you're going to pay whatever it takes to fly it in, no question. But if you're moving something like millions of tons of grain, you're going to pick that slow, steady, and super cheap option, our marathon runner, the cargo ship. This little chart really lays it all out, doesn't it? The big takeaway here is that there's no single best option. There's no silver bullet. You see that air is number 1 for speed and reliability, but it's way down at the bottom for cost. Water is the exact opposite, cheapest by far, but also the slowest. And look at road, number 1 in flexibility. The bottom line is, each one of these modes has its own special superpower. Okay, but here's a thought. What if you didn't have to pick just one? What if you could combine their superpowers? Well, that's exactly where the true genius of the modern supply chain kicks in. We're talking about intermodal transport. Now, pay close attention to this one phrase because it's everything without handling the freight itself. The whole system, the entire reason this works is thanks to one ridiculously simple but absolutely brilliant invention: the standard shipping container. That metal box. Because of that box, you can move goods from a truck to a train to a ship and then back to a truck, and nobody ever has to touch what's inside. So let's walk through a typical journey. A container gets loaded up at a factory and put on the back of a truck. That truck drives it to a port, where a massive crane just plucks it off and stacks it on a giant cargo ship. The ship sails across the ocean. When it arrives, another crane lifts it off the ship and puts it right onto a train for the long journey overland. And then at the very end, one more truck picks it up for that final mile to its destination. It's like a perfectly timed global relay race for your stuff. I really can't overstate how huge this was. Before the container, you had teams of people manually loading and unloading every single thing from a ship. It was slow, painstaking work that could take weeks. Today, it's this beautiful automated dance of cranes, and a whole ship can be turned around in less than a day. This one invention, this simple metal box, is what truly unlocked the global trade we see today. It changed everything. All right, let's switch gears a bit. Imagine you're running a company and you have to ship tons of your product all the time. You come to a massive fork in the road, a huge strategic decision. Do you build your own fleet of trucks? Or do you just hire someone else to handle all of that for you? It's the classic make versus buy dilemma. Okay, so on the one hand, if you own your own fleet, you have total control. They're your trucks, your drivers, running on your schedule. It's basically a moving billboard for your brand. But on the other hand, you could outsource it to what the industry calls a 3PL, or a third-party logistics provider. These guys are specialists. They have the expertise, the networks, and the scale to often do it way cheaper and more efficiently, because moving stuff is literally all they do. So, which way do most companies go? Well, the numbers speak for themselves. A huge majority, about 85%, choose to outsource. It just makes sense for them. They figure, hey, let's focus on what we're good at, designing and making our products, and let's pay the experts to handle the incredibly complex job of getting them from A to B. But, whether a company has its own trucks or hires someone else, there is one goal that is always, always the same: efficiency. It's this constant, relentless drive to be faster, cheaper, and more reliable. In the world of logistics, every single minute and every single penny counts.
So if you're trying to be more efficient, you have to know where your money is going, right? Well, when you look at trucking, it really comes down to three main things. Fuel is the biggest expense, no surprise there. Then you've got the cost of the driver, and then the cost of the truck itself. Add those three up, and you're looking at roughly 75% of the entire cost of operating that truck.
Okay, so if you had to guess, where's the biggest waste of time and money? You'd probably say a truck stuck in a massive traffic jam, right? I mean, that makes sense. But the data tells a completely different and pretty shocking story. The biggest enemy of efficiency isn't what happens on the road. It's what happens at the warehouse. Just look at these numbers. It's wild. A typical truck spends only about 28% of its time actually driving and making progress. Get this. A whopping 35% of its time is spent just sitting still at a warehouse, waiting to get loaded or unloaded. Think about that. That's more time spent waiting than actually moving. It's insane. So if you really want to make things more efficient, the biggest opportunity isn't on the highway. It's right there at the loading dock. And if that wasn't enough, check this out. An unbelievable 98% of all journeys run into some kind of unplanned delay. So what do companies do? They have to plan for the worst. They build in all this extra buffer time, this slack, into their schedules just in case. And what that really means is they have to own more trucks and pay more drivers than they should need just to have them on standby. It pumps these huge hidden costs throughout the entire system. So all of this brings us to one final really big question. We all want our stuff faster, right? And we want it cheaper. But we've just seen how stretched the system already is, with all these inefficiencies baked right in. So as we keep demanding more and more, how can this incredible, invisible engine that powers our world keep up without completely breaking down? It's definitely something to think about the next time you hear that doorbell ring.